Wealthies, welcome back. If you're new here, this is All the Wealth, our Wealth More Wealth Building channel. I'm Mical Jeanlys-White, the founder and CEO, and today we are tackling a pretty interesting issue. If you've ever felt a bit nervous or tense about talking to your mate about money, this is the episode for you. And with me is our very own Tanya Frias, head of wealth planning, which many of you have grown to know on this channel. And for the first time, our own Rick Taborda is here, certified financial planner, and I would say our internal money and couples guru. Rick is like a couple whisperer. So this is going to be really
Okay.
and so needed, right? You guys know we always like to give you guys a bit of the data around some of these topics. And here's what we do know. Money is one of the biggest stressors. And we definitely pulled a few nice little tidbits for you. According to Fidelity's couple and money study, 1 in 5 couples say money is their greatest relationship challenge, and 43%, that's a pretty big number, don't know how much their partners earn. So let's get into it.
Yeah, touchy topic.
And it's one that, we need to talk about because it's a major stressor and it creates a lot of anxiety in couples. And it's not a topic that people like to talk about. I mean, Rick, what have you seen over the years in helping couples with their money?
Well, no one likes to argue, right? So I'm sure every couple has attempted to have the financial discussions, and what they find is that it brings up a lot of tension or arguments, and then so it becomes just an avoidance, and they just avoid it. They don't talk about it because they don't want to argue.
Yeah. And we saw that last year we did a love and wealth survey, and people were very honest in the comments about, literally one person said, I don't feel like arguing, so I don't even bring it up. Like, it's a big one, but it's kind of one of those things that not really good to avoid it.
No, I think it's better that, you know, each person in the relationship knows what's going on with their finances. One of the biggest things is, I was having a conversation with someone a while ago, and I was just talking about what I do when it comes to working with couples. And by the end of the conversation, he said, "You know what? I just thought if something happened to me, my spouse would have no idea where anything is." And you don't want to be in that position. You don't want to get into that position.
Yeah.
And that's the position I've seen over the years, right? I mean, about 20 years of having my own practice. Even if both partners are present,
Yeah.
one may just be checked out the whole time. They're physically present, but they're not paying attention. They feel like, Tanya and my spouse have it taken care of. There was one couple where the spouse would just bring a book to read while they were sitting in front of me. And then, and because I had a practice for so many years, I've had clients pass away. And that's exactly what happens, right? Well, exactly what Rick said. It's a frenzy because the person's just like, I don't know where anything is. I don't know. I don't understand anything. And I know, obviously, I was there. I helped them with their finances up to a certain point. So what it really becomes hard is the day-to-day things.
Yeah.
How were the utilities paid? How was the maintenance
Yeah.
paid? How was who actually was cutting these checks or making these transfers, and where was it coming from? Those little minute details obviously cause a lot of stress. And in the instances where we figured it out or we were able to get the person in a better situation, there was usually someone else, like a child or sister or a brother that could step in and help them because this person was just had so many years of not even handling any finances or had done it and even having it top of mind.
Yeah. And this is not unique to Wealthmore clients and the clients that you guys have seen in other practices. The data is here. 90% of couples, they think they communicate well about money, but over 25% feel left out of those money conversations. And as much as we want to believe things should be like 50-50, the vast majority of couples report that one person manages most of it. So, Magnify Money surveys show that 50% of couples say that the other person in the relationship has taken on or frankly left to do it all. And that can't be a good feeling because I don't know anyone who's like, yeah, I want to be the budget king or queen. This is what I want to do every month is pay all the bills, balance the checkbook, make sure we're saving and investing, and the other person can be just kind of like free of all things related to their money.
Who wants to be the person with the stress or have it all on their shoulders? I've had clients tell me, when the other spouse was not around, like, this person doesn't even know what I've had to do, right?
Right?
To make it happen.
Yeah.
And that's a terrible position to be in as a person, right? You're where you have this partner for life, but in a lot of situations you don't have a partner, and that from a relationship standpoint obviously doesn't feel good.
And we want you guys to take this seriously because the data shows that couples that don't get this right about money, 43%, it's an indicator of divorce. Like money is the number one stressor. And avoiding it, problems don't age well. Avoiding it is not the solution. So, how soon in a relationship do you guys think people should start building those good money habits? I remember years ago at a previous role, we did a fun survey about credit scores. And we brought up the issue of when you're dating, how soon should you exchange credit scores? And boy, did it go viral. It got covered on like the morning shows. USA Today covered it because the range of like responses, some people are like, after the second date, some people were like, I got married and still didn't know. And boy, do I wish I had asked the question early on. So, this is a thorny issue. How soon should couples start talking about money?
I think ideally, once you become engaged, once you know that you are going to spend the rest of your life with this person, that's when you should start having those money conversations because you want to know what you're stepping into. People, some person might be a saver, one might be a spender. You want to know that about your spouse. You definitely want to know if someone has a lot of debt. You don't want to be stepping into a marriage and then finding out later that this person has this ton of debt, and now now as a couple, you have to kind of get out of this debt if you want to get anywhere as far as reaching your goals. One of the things I've had for a while is just it's a program that I use for engaged couples just to have these money conversations so they can learn about each other and what their views and perspectives is about money, so that they know what they're getting into as a couple.
Yeah. I love this program, Rick. So is it like, before my husband and I got married, our church had a pre-marriage like counseling program that you must graduate from in order to say I do. If you fail, they will not marry you. Like that's how seriously they took it. But part of that program was you had to have this money conversation. You even had to pull your credit scores, come in and share your respective credit scores so that you were going into the relationship like eyes wide open. And I will spill the tea on this, but this was the longest session we had, like down to the point where the Reverend was like, why don't you guys go have dinner, come back? That's how heated it got because I am the spreadsheet person, like line item. I just want to like bean counter. I'm a finance person, want to track everything, balance the checkbook. And my husband was just like, I know how much I spend, know how much I make. I'm not out here being frivolous. I don't want to waste time tracking each of these items. So we had to like come up with a system that would work. And
Yeah, I
that,
think it's also an indicator of like how do you solve problems together, right? So if you go into this meeting and it turns out one person is in a bad credit situation and the other one isn't, how do you figure this out? How do you work through it together just like you'd work through any other problem? It's a problem, and how do you solve it together? I think people the touchy part is that you take it so personally because money is personal. And depending on what your experience has been with money alone as an individual, that informs how you handle the situation. But, when you're coming into something together, it's how do we work on this? How do we handle this together? And I also think the other part is like, what do you value? Right? So similar to my personal situation now, my partner has a very different perspective on how he sees money, right? He doesn't see it the same way I do. So we have to meet in the middle a lot of the time because it's the way we move forward. Like, okay, this is what we want to accomplish together. Let's figure out how we accomplish it together. And my way is not going to be his way, right? But we have to find the way to do it together.
I love that we're talking about like people's money systems, right? Because people are getting married later. So by the time you are coupling, be it marriage or coexisting, however you couple, it tends to be later now. So now you've gotten a system in place that
Mhm.
pretty wed to. And if it's working for you, you're probably not that open to like, let me try this other system. You're like, oh, this works happy here. Like, I'm happy counting every penny in and out, bouncing my checkbook.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I do. But now we have to like come together and not have it be explosive, right? Like, we have to come together and respect each other's systems and money personas. And if you guys didn't catch episode 19, highly recommend that you go and listen to that episode where we talk about this. It's not an accident that each of our significant others has a different way in which they manage. And no process is good or bad. You do have to find that happy medium. But I want to double click on the credit score because I believe maybe not the first date, but early on, because people have dreams, right? We're gonna buy a house and we're gonna do this. And one person has an 800 and the other one has a 520. Houston, we have a problem.
Yeah, I think so, but um, it takes me a while to figure out whether we are doing anything. I, I I'm not interested in sharing anything with you that early. It's more of I have to make a decision that this is someone I want to do this thing with. And if there is a problem, how I'm going to be more willing to work on the problem if this is what I want. If this is my goal with this person. So I'm not telling anyone anything until I'm sure about the person. And that may be taken some kind of way, and that's fine too. But I wouldn't talk about it that early because I wouldn't be, I need to know if this is someone I'm willing to even have the conversation with.
Anya's like, maybe not the first date. How about you, Rick?
Definitely.
No, definitely not the first date. So I'm gonna stick with all right, you guys are engaged or you're even living together, right? Not even engaged, but living together. And for me, the credit score isn't as important, right? What's important is so what we do, as financial planners, we have a tool, an aggregator tool where you can connect your accounts, you can see your whole financial picture as a couple. That's where you can get an idea of your significant other. Do they have a lot of debt? Do they have a lot of money in the bank? You get a feeling, understanding of where each of you are individually and where you stand together as a couple as far as money, accounts and money. And that'll give you good ideas. And then you can start having conversations. Credit score, I mean, it's important, sure. But there could be reasons why someone has a bad score or it doesn't have a really great score. It just could be starting off early and creating a credit score. It could be some kind of hanging accounts that, for reasons not their fault, they have bad credit scores. To me, is where you are now. Let's connect our accounts, see where we are as a couple, and that starts the kind of awareness of where you are as a couple.
Yeah.
I agree with Rick, and it's also because you have to take judgment out of the picture, right? The score is there for a whole bunch of reasons, right? But are you comfortable talking about what happened? Are you with someone that you can work with to improve the situation? I've had couples in the past where one person was in a bad financial situation because they were the primary caregiver for their family, right? And they had a whole bunch of things going on. And they were partnered up with someone who's very successful, was the primary breadwinner in this household, and the one that had the financial issues completely refused to discuss this with their partner. They felt like this is my problem to figure out. This person has nothing to do with it. Why would I include them in this conversation? So that goes back to like, it's never cut and dry. A score is just a number. It means absolutely nothing in the context of people and their experience. So it's more like, okay, can we get this person, can we get you guys to a place where you feel comfortable receiving help from your partner because you could use it and they want to help you, right? So people and money is much more, and especially couples, is much more complicated than just a score, or even how much money you have in the bank or how much money you have invested. That's why it's important that your church had that process, because can you create a safe space to come to a place where we are in this together from today, right? Good or bad, because that will be an indicator of how long you are together and how successful your relationship is going to be.
Right. And I was going to say, see, Tanya used those words, safe space, right? This is where, when you have these conversations, you got to create a safe space to be able to tell your side of your perspective on money, your goals, whatever it is. And it has to be a safe space without judgment or anything, because that's the only way that you guys that couples will be able to talk about money without having to, you know.
Yeah. And I want to talk about a few other numbers that create like anxiety and stress for couples. So we talked about the credit score. It's a number, it could have so many things that come into it. But another number that comes up is income and then debt. How do you guys bring safe spaces there, particularly as couples, more and more women are out earning the men? That comes into certain sort of expectations around roles. But then even we're seeing in the data that fewer couples are even commingling their finances, which makes it harder to sort of bring people together to do this as a couple. Like there's a cultural shift that's happening where people are keeping these things more separate, and I would imagine as planners, it's pretty hard to have a shared goal when people won't share.
Well, yeah, and I think because of the shift that you talked about in terms of gender roles in relationships and who's the breadwinner, who makes more, and who works outside of the home, who takes care of children, I think it just comes into play like, what do you value and what do each of you bring in terms of value in the relationship? And it's not, I guess the implication or the assumption is that the most important value may be financial, right? But I think it just forces people to figure out what do they value and what do each of you bring in terms of value in the relationship. And it may not be financial, right? It may be um, who spends more time or who's more available to take care of children, who takes care of the household, who takes care of the day to day. I mean, McCall, you have kids. I have my son. I mean, if you
Jump
you volunteer to drive this kid around today, I'm happy. And that ain't cost me. That didn't cost you a thing. It saved me time, right? So figuring out as a relationship from a relationship standpoint, what do you value, right? What is helpful to me? What are acts of service? What are acts of love? Figuring out those things will help you, I think, have an easier conversation when it comes to money, because there may be a disparity in income. I know my girlfriends that are really high earners that are single, they tell me it's because I want to find someone that adds value to my life. And it's not so much from a financial standpoint, because financially I'm fine.
Yeah.
But some men may have an issue with the fact that they are fine financially and they may feel like I don't add value to this situation because of this disparity, but you can, right? So these conversations are so much bigger than dollars and cents. It's almost like, what do you value and what do you value together?
But ultimately, couples do need to come up with like a system,
Yeah.
right? And I have heard a broad spectrum of systems that people are putting at play down to percentages and If one person like combining the two incomes and then proportionally sort of setting up like the contributions, and we even hear celebrities, coming back from stances they made over, 50-50, hard 50-50, but one person makes 1 million and the other makes 100,000. Well, that 50-50 is not going to come together very well. So curious, like how, because you bring people together, like I almost feel like you're a therapist, a money advisor and a therapist in these
Yeah.
conversations with couples.
Yeah, it feels like that sometimes. I try not to do therapy, right? But I do create it, like I said, I do create a safe space because there are times where during the conversations, couples will start arguing, and so I'll just sit back and let them have their discussions. I think the best approach is to come at it with, all right, let's all get on the same page of what is it you want to accomplish as a couple? What are your goals? Right? Because even if you have a high earner who's bringing in most of the income, I think it can be more frustrating than having the other person spending all the money and not being able to achieve your goals. Because then you feel like you're putting money into this black hole. The high earner is feels like they're just working and they're not seeing their goals accomplished. Right? So it's making sure, number one, making sure you're on the same page as far as what your goals are, how are they going to get funded, and then we have this thing where one may be a saver, may be a spender. And how do we set up a system so that each can feel comfortable that that they're saving enough for their goals, and the other person feels like they can spend without feeling guilt or judgment, or feel like that they're doing something to hurt the couple going forward.
Now, I love that, like creating the safe space, having people use the aggregator tool, which we offer at Wealth More, so they can link their accounts and see sort of your individual and the full picture. And then make centering the conversation around what do you guys want to achieve as a couple. So be it short-term goals, long-term goals, by it buying a house, how much do you guys want to save and invest every month? What does your future like retirement plans look like, and kind of maybe removing a lot of the emotion but getting this kind of collaboration around it.
Yeah, and I even I think we talked about this in the past. I remember working with a couple um where one was a high earner and the spouse was more of a spender. But we just needed to figure out what she liked to spend money on, right? And this happened to be the wife that was a spender. And it turned out that she liked to spend money like Christmas time, like holidays were like super important to her and birthdays. And it wasn't even that she was spending money on herself, it was just the people that were important to her. And once he understood that, he was like, "Oh, we just need to let's just plan how much are we gonna spend on this and when." And it was just they had never communicated why or what she's spending the money on. Like he was like, "I don't even see it. Like I don't know where this money is going." But they never talked about it. They never talked about what was important. And they just needed to come to a number that they were cool with. And it was a non-issue going forward.
Yeah, I love that because we saw that in the previous episode that spenders also tend to be givers.
Yeah.
They're not always like spending on themselves. They just tend to also be some of the most generous people. And so we don't want people to feel bad about being generous. But if you can come up with a system that has like a budget tied to it, some guardrails, then that sort of like gives everybody room to be comfortable. Like, hey, the spending budget, the sort of free generous budget is X amount a year or X amount a month. And now you have a system that everyone can feel comfortable around.
Yeah, and it all comes down to communication. That's why, when we work with couples, when we bring up a topic, we make sure that each person has their say. So maybe one person, discusses how they feel about a certain goal or topic, and then we'll say, all right, well, how do you feel about this? Or what are your thoughts on this? We want to make sure that each couple has their say, equal say, because there are a couple dynamics where one couple overtakes the conversation, and we try to avoid that. We make sure that everyone has their say, so like their voice is heard.
That. And then Rick, once a couple has like a nice system, like they've had these initial conversations, everyone's on the same page around each other's like financial pictures, got some good goals, a system happening. How often do you like for couples to kind of like talk about it or revisit their system or even check in to see like, hey, is the system even working for us? Do we need to tweak it or fine tune it?
So it all depends on the couple, right? Some people have weekly family meetings. Some people have monthly family meetings. Some people have quarterly family meetings. It all depends on the couple and what's important to them as far as keeping track of everything.
Well, I will tell you guys, the data shows that if you are having those weekly or monthly discussions, you're definitely better off. Even shows that those couples are happier about their money. They're more likely to meet those money goals. So I wouldn't recommend maybe once a year, maybe bring it in a little more. 'Cause a lot can happen in a year, and you wanna sort of, like, normalize having these conversations, so the more you have them, probably the more organic it feels, and it doesn't feel like we're having the money conversation this month or this year.
I think it's important to have it scheduled if you are not used to talking about it, right? There are some people who don't get me started. Money's coming up pretty often in this house. But if you're constantly having conversation, right, there isn't much of a like get together to have a whole session about them because there's a lot of awareness already in terms of what's going on, how are we doing, what are we trying to do, especially when it comes to finances. I mean, I think, yeah, it depends on the couple. And if you have never had money conversations in the past, then yeah, you probably should schedule them so that you get more comfortable having them.
And it doesn't have to be, like, some three-hour ordeal.
No, nobody wants to do that.
Right? Like, that just sounds like a visit to the dentist or something, like, nobody wants to do that. But if you normalize it, even the fun stuff and celebrate the wins, like, I think, if we focus on it as like a chore, then people don't see the bright side of it, but hopefully you guys are celebrating the wins, like, "Hey, we hit our savings goal. We're investing, we're seeing our wealth grow, like, we're meeting these shared goals." And I would encourage you guys to go celebrate when you hit certain milestones as a couple, right? And talk about it because we hear all too often, the generational shift was that our parents never talked about money. And so many of us felt blindsided when we had to take it on because it was never talked about. So if couples are talking about it, it will benefit your offspring to hear that, oh, it's quite normal to talk about the bills, the budget, the fact that we hit this milestone, we bought this thing, we invested, we're on track. It just becomes like any other fluid conversation.
Yeah, we haven't even touched on couples and kids and money, right? Because that is a huge topic, right? That's a whole other section of, you have all these ideas for your kids and how do you treat children and in terms of money and what do you think is the right way? What do you value? What do you want them to value? What are you leaving to your children, if anything, right? Those sort of that's an extra step
Yeah.
as well.
And we talked about this in the last episode. Your relationship with money starts in your childhood.
Yeah.
The children are watching people. They are watching you guys avoiding it, arguing about it, or doing a great job with it. So realize that you're not just doing it for yourself, but it's also part of like that generational good or bad habits. And it's also an opportunity to start like sprinkling those seeds of like good money habits, good, like, open dialogue, communication, comfort. They will model your behavior. They will do what they see even more so than what you say. So, as we sort of think about what would be sort of like our top three things, wealthies, what do we want to leave our wealthies with? Obviously, come talk to Rick. Rick's got a whole system, not therapy, but certainly safe spaces, Tanya as well, to help you guys just unpack this and come up with a system that works.
The communication, right? Because if you're not communicating about this, what else are you uncomfortable communicating about? Like communication is just key to any relationship, and this is one of the things you'll have to get comfortable communicating about.
And don't be afraid to seek help.
Yeah.
Contact us here at Wealthmore. We create a safe space. You want someone who's neutral, someone who's going to allow both of you to express your feelings about money, your thoughts of your goals, what you want to accomplish as a couple. And you'll be surprised how much you'll learn about each other. And I've seen this best part of what we do is seeing couples come together and start working together and then start achieving their goals. It's the best part. It's the best part of the job.
Yeah, that I could not agree more, guys. Like the communication is key. And then the success that comes with it, like the data is there. You're hearing from Tanya and Rick that, when you guys come together, work on those goals and celebrate the wins, the outcomes are better. Like two people at it is better than two people moving in opposite directions. So, wealthies, go to wealthmore.net, schedule some time with Tanya and Rick, work together on these goals, come up with the system, but celebrate the wins. Communicate and celebrate the wins.
Together.
Together. And even if the cultural shift is going another way, it's okay to buck the trend. Until next time, all the wealth, work together. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.